So welcome everyone, let's get this show on the road. So I would like to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the lands on which we are meeting. And I would also like to pay my respects to the elders past and present. And also that at Rotary, we understand that cultivating a diverse and equitable and inclusive culture is essential to realising our vision of a world where people unite to take action to create lasting change. So that's the RI diversity statement, and it's very relevant in membership. So thank you. Our topic for tonight is where are our new members? Actually, it's probably more about identifying who our potential new members are and how to connect with them. For our first speaker tonight, I would like to welcome Rotarian David Hanlon from the Rotary Club of Frankston North. Now, many of you would know David. He's been a very active person in district, in training and governance, and is well known for his passion for membership. He has been a membership chair, and he is very helpful in helping me with my role as membership chair this year, and has volunteered, well, I volunteered him actually, to talk about one of his areas of expertise, which is that data and statistics and how to find your community. So I'll just ask, as David's going through his program, that you put all the questions in the chat, and we'll run through the questions afterwards. So thank you, David. I'll let you take over.
Okay, thanks, Linda. Can everyone see the screen now?
Yep.
Okay, great. All right, so what I'll be talking on tonight is how to access and use demographic resources. So, you know, where can you find out about your local area? Well, there's several municipalities have websites which have a good range of data on them. And it's a matter of just testing to see what is available locally. I, however, like a site called profileid.com.au, and that has most of the municipalities around Australia are listed there. And the reason why I like it is that it breaks it down with a fair amount of information which is being gleaned from the most recent census around community profiles, population forecast, economic profile, and even housing stats are in there as well. So you know when you go into the website, whether it be the local one or you use this, what are you actually looking for? Well, I'm going to use one that I pulled out, which is Mornington. Did that come up, or do I have to use the slide? No, looks like it. So I'll go back to using the slide. Hopefully you can read that. But you can see there when you're coming down on the Mornington one there's population, you know, how old are the breaks down the population by age, what do they do, where do they live, community interest groups there, and there's a whole heap of information there that you can have a look at. Now, you can use this to work out, you know, what the average age is in your area, where are they working, what are they doing, if there's any ethnic groups, special interest groups there. You'll probably find a lot of it is in this website. You also, by tapping into the employment side, you can work out the type of industries and businesses that are in your area. And what should you be looking for? Well, I usually go and have a look at the population growth to see whether it's aging or whether it's a young population which is growing. I have a look at the breakdown of ages and see what what's that showing me. The gender, ethnicity, industries, whether there's any large employers, whether you've got a preponderance of small businesses. And more importantly, it will tell you where the population works. Does it work locally or does it work out of the area and it's a dormitory suburb where people are travelling out to work and coming back of a night? So I'll give you, by analysing this data, we'll give you an insight into your community. It'll tell you where the growth is. It'll tell you who the major employers are, if there's any tertiary providers or government departments or hospitals in the area. So then what do you need to do as a club when you get this? Well, you need to critically analyse and determine what your area of influence is. So, where are you likely to pick up potential members? Is there major employers in the area, or are they small businesses? Again, as we spoke about before, do the people live and work locally? The other thing you can gather from this is, if going into and reading a bit more on the websites, is it'll identify some of the areas where you can engage with your community. Depending on the size of the municipality, they'll probably have officers that are specialising in engagement with the community, and you can probably tap into them. If they haven't got that, you'll be able to identify who the interest groups are, and you should be able to contact them directly. Then you need to work out how you're going to engage with that community. If what is it that you can offer a potential member? And if we come back to the reasons why people will volunteer, it's usually around they want to provide some service back into the community, or they're cause driven. This then should tell you the type of club that you'll need, because you can't satisfy everyone. So you need to work out how it is that you can get the most potential members and keep them engaged. It's no good bringing them in the door if you can't engage them in service into the community. We asked that question about where they live and work, and this is particularly important when it comes down to determining when your club meets. It's no good having a 6 for 6:30, for instance, meeting time if most of your people are working outside the area and are travelling back. They probably won't be able to get back in time for that sort of meeting. If you've got a preponderance of small business in your area, they're probably not interested in evening meetings. They're probably more interested in a breakfast type meeting. You need to think about your special ethnic groups. How will they fit into your club? Or do you need to think about the type of structure, possibly a satellite club that they would fit into better? So there's a whole heap of things that you need to look at to determine where your potential members are going to come from, but more importantly, what services they or your club can support for them, and get out and engage with them. We've got to be flexible enough to determine that we might need to have different meeting times. I go back to probably one of the most successfully growing clubs in Australia, which is in Seaford, South Australia. And they have an interesting meeting structure where they meet for planning in one of the nights during the week. They have another night where it's purely about social activities, engaging with the members and having a bit of fun. And then they have a number of meetings on a Sunday afternoon where they're actually doing things. So that constitutes their meetings. So you can see that they're flexible enough to have varying meeting times, and that appeals to a lot of people in the community. And as a result of that, they have grown that club substantially in the last 3 to 4 years. Questions? I know there's probably a lot of questions there. Linda, I will stop sharing and sorry.
Mark's looking after chat questions.
Yeah, there's nothing in the chat at the moment.
Okay. Has anyone used this data to date? So that's...
just a quick question if I may, mate. You're saying the data on that website sourced from the latest census data, is that the root data for that?
That is correct, yeah.
Right.
Some of the councils will add further details in there from their own records, like building approvals, and so that'll give you some idea of new houses being constructed in the area, et cetera, but bulk of it comes from the census. It won't be the one that you've just completed recently, but the one before.
Yeah, it's not available until February or something next year, but I found that by diving into the census data itself, you get some fairly good information. But does this sort of give you more insights, perhaps? Is that why you prefer that one, Dave?
I do, because it goes a little bit further in breaking down the population and also the local businesses.
Sure. Good insight, mate. Thank you. That's great.
Yep.
Thanks, David. And I think it's quite interesting because I think that quite often some of the Rotary clubs have lost contact with their local community, probably not through any fault of their own, that, like the age of some of the members, probably they're not interacting maybe with the services such as, like what council provides information. They're probably not aware. I know that I was talking to a membership chair from Seymour. Now, Seymour is one of those areas that has got a big growth with people moving to tree changes, moving away from Melbourne and finding Nirvana in Seymour. And they are actually targeting the local real estate agents with a Rotary folder and putting all the community information in the folder, and obviously highlighting Rotary as a place to contact the local community, to find their feet in the local community, and they're getting a great response. Another club that I know about is Yarrawonga, where they've had a very traditional club in Yarrawonga for many years. It's a normal dinner club, traditional dinner meeting, and they've just started a new breakfast club with 25 members because they're identifying that people are moving to Yarrawonga for lifestyle, but are actually running their own businesses, and a breakfast meeting suits them. So they've actually got a brand new club up and running with 25 members, which is pretty amazing. So that's actually recognising that people in your community, and using that data that David's explaining will help you identify the changes that are happening around your community that we're not obviously always aware of, because we are sort of a little bit away from our community sometimes, that we are meeting regularly with our regular members and not probably reaching out as much to the new community. So using that data that David's explaining would be a good idea, just to get, I guess, your groundwork in place, identify that perhaps there's a whole new Retirement village, that's another area that people are really focusing in on. Whole retirement villages turning into Rotary clubs, because they're people who have energy, they're recently retired, they're looking to give back in their community, and there's certainly opportunities for new clubs to be developed there. But there's also opportunities for our traditional clubs to gain new members just by going out and identifying and inviting people along to find out what Rotary is all about. And we know it's difficult now, but we are now preparing for the new future, because it's not going to be too long before we are all out there again. And it's going to be an amazing opportunity to really go out and meet new people and get them into Rotary.
Yeah.
So thank you, David. Are there any other questions in the chat, Mark?
Sadly, while Mark's checking that, I might just use an example of a particular club where I looked at some data, and this was one where the town was growing pretty rapidly, and we discovered that there was something like 1,000 school children, 1,000 children under school age. So therein is an opportunity for you to establish a coffee club, for a mum and bubs club. And you could think of the projects that would interest them. So, you know, that's an example of when you dive into this data, it tells you things that are not immediately apparent to you. And the other reason for diving into this is that not all businesses now have got shop fronts. So you'll be surprised how much business is in your community that you're not even aware of. So, Mark, did we have any more questions? Or
No, there's no more questions at the moment, but I'm sure as we go through the night, they'll start coming in. So I'll feed them through as they come in. I'd just also like to have a special welcome to Carol and Brian Coffey from District 9670 from memory, just north of Sydney.
That's us, Mark.
Great to have you Zoom bombing our Rotary discussion on membership. So more than welcome, and happy to have any input that you might have for the night as well.
Can I have an example of how I use statistics similar to what David's been talking about?
Certainly.
Yep. Well, first of all, David, thank you for making me aware of that site. I use a lot of demographics research in my former career. I'm a retired police officer, and we used it for crime profiling. And in the area I was, and I used it in Rotary as well. But as an assistant Rotary coordinator, I got asked to speak to a Rotary club in Sydney at Drummoyne, and they were having membership issues. So I went there and I had looked at their profile, and I wasn't familiar with the area at all. So I just looked up Drummoyne, and I found out from I was using ABS stats, which have already been mentioned. I looked there and I saw that they were primarily the highest percentage of the population were women above the age of 50. They were extremely well educated, extremely high income earners, professionals, of course, and more devoted to the green parties with their political preferences. And I spoke to them. I spoke to the Drummoyne Club about this, and I said I would be targeting those women because they were a strong women female club, and they had a lot of pictures on Facebook of them partying and cocktail parties and having a lot of fun. I said you should be attracting men actually with their Facebook photos. But I said to them, have a look at environmental projects in your area, and that's what they done 18 months ago. They changed their name as well from Drummoyne to Iron Cove, I think it is, because that gave them a bigger geographic area, and they actually invited me down. I couldn't go down there due to COVID at the time, but they were inducting new members, 3, 4, 5 at a time, and just through using the demographics. So congratulations, David, on bringing this to the fore tonight, and thank you very much for sharing that site with me. It is a great site, and I love the idea of the mums at the schools Down the road from me, we've got a Catholic school and a public school, side by side, primary schools, 1,000 kids in each school, and you look at all the mums and dads that are down there every morning dropping the kids off, and they're not talking to each other. And I've tried to convince my club that we need to go down there and grab them and have a 9 a.m. coffee club. And try and get it running there. But my club disagrees with me. They say if you've got members, Brian, bring them to our club. But my club's changing. We're slowly turning it around. But there's some great tips there tonight. I encourage people to run with them. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian.
Thank you so much, Brian. That's fantastic information, and thank you for sharing it with our district. That's wonderful. I'm sort of getting a little bit excited even. It's the prospect of finally breaking out of COVID and actually getting some real opportunities to grow our clubs. It's very exciting, and I'm starting to feel the vibe. So finally, we may get up and about again, which will be fantastic. So thank you, David. That's incredibly powerful information, and really looking at who is in your local area and the type of work when they get home. It's certainly worth looking closer. I'm sure David would be very happy to work with your club membership chair to reveal your own little census. So let's see if we can take advantage of David's expertise, and he's already pointed us in the right direction for getting that local information. So now I have the pleasure of introducing another Rotarian who is on my membership committee, and that's Rotarian Grant Godineau from the Rotary Club of Traralgon, so up the other end of the district. He is a fairly new member in our district, but very well known in RI circles. Now, Grant is the president at the moment of Rotary's LGBTQ+ fellowship. And as our diversity chair and champion in our newly formed membership team, Grant's going to focus on our commitment to diversity, equity and inclusion, and give us some ideas of how to help make your club and Rotary as a whole more inclusive. So thank you, Grant. You can take over now.
Thanks, Linda. And it's funny, just to comment on one of the points that Mark put in the chat just there about COVID opening opportunities for tree changes. I think that's exactly me. We recently moved into the district from Brunswick because my partner got a job out this way. So exactly what's happened in my case as well. So definitely true. Lots of opportunities coming from people like us moving into the area. And thank you, Linda, as well for your welcome and introduction. That summed it up nicely. I think I've been a member of the Rotary family for, goodness, it must be about 15 years now. I went to Ryler as a teenager and have been part of Rotary ever since. So really excited to be part of the district and have the opportunity to talk about our commitment to diversity, equity and inclusion. And before I start, I might just acknowledge the traditional owners and custodians of the land on which we are all meeting from tonight. For me, it's the Gunai Kurnai people here in the Latrobe Valley, and I pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. And because of the content I'm going to speak about tonight as well, I'm going to acknowledge my elders, the elders of the LGBT+ community. Their activism has meant that I have a platform to stand on and talk about myself freely. And we can have conversations about topics like diversity, equity, and inclusion. So thank you. So what is DEI? Rotary's made a commitment to diversity, equity and inclusion. And so I thought I might give you a quick introduction into what those words mean before I go too much further. So I like this as a bit of a simple summary. By diversity, we mean the presence of all people from all backgrounds, cultures and identities. By equity, we mean the striving for fair treatment of opportunities for and the advancement of all Rotary participants. And by inclusion, we mean the ability to create experiences and foster environments in which all people will feel welcomed, respected and valued. And it's funny, I'm going to quit out of my presentation for a second, and I just want to show you some of those demographic statistics while we're on the topic of equity for a second. So I'm going to assume that this is off census data to link it back to what we were just talking about. And there's elements here where you can see, I picked the city of Hume because it's where I grew up. So sorry, I couldn't find Latrobe on the list, and this was the next thing I clicked on. But I think if we're thinking about diversity and inclusion, your population summary here pretty much gives you a whole lot of it, but not all of it is important to note. So you've got gender, but what's not shown there is gender diverse people. You've got Indigenous populations, you've got Australian citizens, you've got down here people with a disability. Yeah. Did I click on the wrong bit?
We're seeing your slide presentation. We're not seeing this other material.
Ah, bugger. Hang on. That button there and that button there. How's that? There we go.
Better.
Much better. Thank you. So you've got gender, but missing some categories perhaps. We've got Indigenous, disability. It's all here. All the diversity stats are here. But what we aren't doing yet or seeing perhaps is the information about how to actually make those people feel welcome. And I just noticed it didn't swap back. So I'm going to try that again. There we go. And I'm going to push that button there. So what does DEI mean to Rotary then? And I'm going to go back into those stats as I go through here a little bit as well. This is what RI board has approved in terms of DEI. So at Rotary, we understand that cultivating a diverse, equitable and inclusive culture is essential to realising our vision of a world where people unite and take action to create lasting change. And this is the diversity bit in the second paragraph here. We value diversity and celebrate contributions of people of all backgrounds across age. So we're looking at generational diversity, ethnicity. So we're starting to think about where people have come from. Are they Australian citizens? Did they migrate? What are those different countries and places that people have come from, which wraps up into race as well, and colour. Disability and learning style are important aspects as well. Religion and faith, socioeconomic status, how are we welcoming people from different money brackets, let's say. Culture links back up into that ethnicity, race and colour line before. Marital status, languages spoken. Here's the one that I harp on about a lot: sex, sexual orientation and gender identity. And there were layers of that were missing in the demographic data. In Australia, we don't collect data on LGBTIQ plus people in the census. We're a bit of an invisible minority in terms of census data at the moment. So sometimes you have to go searching in a few different places to find that. And then we finish it all off there, as well as differences in ideas, thoughts, values, and beliefs. Recognizing that individuals from certain groups have historically experienced barriers to membership, participation, and leadership, we commit to advancing equity in all aspects of Rotary, including our community partnerships, so that each person has the necessary access to resources, opportunities, networks, and support to thrive. And I love that paragraph because it really talks about the positive way that we're going to do it, as well as recognizing that we haven't always done the best that we could in the past. We believe that all people hold visible and invisible qualities that inherently make them unique, and we strive to create an inclusive culture where each person knows they are valued and belong. In line with our value of integrity, we are committed to being honest and transparent about where we are in our DEI journey as an organisation, continuing to learn and do better. So it's the start of a journey. I always like to think of this DEI journey. It's the start of a journey for Rotary as an organisation, and understanding this statement and understanding what DEI means is the start of a journey for our clubs as well. It's one thing for RI to put this together. It's another thing for us to implement it. The DEI task force, RI created this. They are putting together a plan for diversity, equity, inclusion in Rotary. They put their vision together, which you saw there, but they're gonna start to talk about regional differences, needs, and priorities as well. We know that some of these groups are perhaps more invisible in some countries. Indigenous populations, for example, are an issue for us here in Australia, but perhaps not in some parts of Europe, for example. The DEI plan will focus on all areas of DEI, and the commitment is the first aspect of delivering on that plan, which was the slide before. And we all have a role to play. So that's what it is. Now, how do we do it? Because DEI and membership link really closely, because it's about creating a really welcoming environment for people, no matter who they are. So I've got some suggestions and some stuff that you can hopefully take away. And please interrupt me for questions and clarifications or anything as I go along. So my first little step in a DEI journey for a club is to start having conversations. In order to understand the challenges that exist for people that look different to us, our leaders at all levels, and all of our members, in fact, should stay connected to what it means to be someone in that different group. So maybe asking a local group to speak at your club. So we're thinking of career heritage groups. We're thinking of LGBTI plus groups that might be running at your local council. There's disability advocates all over the place. And even in some cases, there's cultural or location-based business groups that you could come and speak to your club. Get them to speak about the issues and the things that are going on in their communities, the things that their groups are doing to promote inclusion. Let them know that you exist and that you welcome them, and that you'll have honest and open conversations. There's also a whole lot of resources that Rotary's put together that you could download and have a look at and start to discuss at some of your club assemblies. So the RI website has all of these really great, this is a list of stuff from the 2020 RI convention, and I can post this into the Microsoft Teams group after the chat, so you can have a look. But the links don't work, so you'd have to go to that rotary.org/membership site. And there's a massive diversity, equity, and inclusion learning topic in My Rotary that you can access, as well as a whole lot of other resources, from engaging young professionals to building a diverse club to unconscious bias awareness. And then on top of that as well, my fellowship has put together a whole lot of resources around the LGBT plus community. So things like a assessment tool around how welcoming you might be to LGBT plus people, and everything that defines all of the letters in that alphabet on our website as well. So there's lots of resources out there, and it's about having those discussions and those conversations at a club level around what does it mean to be a person in this group, and what did you learn from doing that activity or completing that little resource. My next little step in the journey is about setting a meaningful public example. So small gestures like a rainbow or an ATSI, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander flag, or the rainbow heart that I had on the front page that the fellowship has created on the bottom of your website, on a resource that your club makes. Things like making an acknowledgement of country at the start of a meeting, or putting Rotary statement on DEI somewhere in your resources, in your membership pack, on your website, things like that. Make a really public example that your club is welcoming and welcoming and open to people that look different. Even if you're not trying to attract an Aboriginal person, or even if you're not trying to attract a person that identifies as LGBTIQ+, that little public example will say to everyone, hey, we're open and we're willing to let people that look different to us into our club, even if that isn't the group you're targeting, and even if that isn't necessarily a group of people that you have in your club. Just doing those little things means that you've set an example. You're saying that we're welcoming, we accept people that are different in our club. Here's a couple of examples. So the Ryla website in District 9790 uses the rainbow heart icon. We've got that really simple DEI statement on the fellowship's website. What does DEI mean to us? Some clubs I know around the place have purchased a plaque to acknowledge Aboriginal owners at their meeting sites and asked if they could put that up. And my fellowship sells these little Rainbow Heart Rotary lapel pins as well. So lots of little things that you can do that make a really big public statement to people that look and feel a bit different. My next little suggestion, support projects that address key community issues for diverse communities. We already do a lot of this stuff in Rotary. Australian Rotary Health has the Indigenous scholarships. So letting people know that you do that. Considering projects around HIV and AIDS treatment and sexual health. We have an action group for sexual health and HIV AIDS in Rotary. Looking at the mental health issues and homelessness issues that are really prevalent in LGBTIQ+ communities and even people with a disability. And then we all know about violence against women and families, and there's new research also, again, sorry, it's my topic area, but I'm going to say LGBTIQ+ people again. But all of those issues that I've got listed on the screen and doing projects that support those groups of people are really important to letting those communities know that Rotary is welcoming and will look at everyone. I hope I clicked the right buttons for my sound to share. I think I did. I'm going to play you a really quick video and then I've got a question for you.
Oh, gay. Actually, Nigel, that's not gay at all. It's deeply disappointing, but it's not gay. Hey? Look, bro, unless that pie is a man who loves another man, then it's not gay.
Or a woman who loves another woman.
Thank you, Muzza. Steve's gay.
Steve's not gay. Steve, you're not gay, are you?
Quite gay.
Oops, don't want the video again. Next slide, that button. Interesting video, but my question to you is, have you seen stuff like that happen in your club before? I have, lots of clubs I've visited. It's usually in a fine session, and it's usually something that's really subtle and that people think will just go over as a joke. But I can tell you that when I've sat in a club meeting before and someone's brought out a gay joke, or I've been sitting there and someone's brought out a sexist joke and I brought a female friend to a club meeting, we walk away from that meeting and never want to go back. We know that a fine session and stuff like that's meant to be a lot of fun, but it's about doing things like that in a bit more of a delicate way and making sure that we're not presenting things in a problematic way that to show those communities that we're not supportive or that we're not quite welcoming or we don't quite get them. So my last little suggestion around that is to take on a piece of advice from Holger that he presented in his presidency year, was that there's no place within Rotary for racism, homophobia, transphobia, sexism, classism, or ageism. And for me to encourage you to stand up and be an active bystander when you see something in your club that just doesn't quite feel right. And this quote, and I couldn't find who said it, it's just always quoted as an anonymous quote. I always wondered why someone didn't do something about that. Then I realized that I am somebody. So whenever I hear one of those things that just doesn't quite feel right at a club meeting, I'm always the first person to stand up and say, hey, I don't think that was okay. And it's usually to a person after it's happened, and it's usually one-on-one. And it's usually a really great opportunity for me to teach them something about myself and about my community. But it's okay for anybody to do that too. So that's all that I had to present to you today. And I'm just wondering if anyone has any questions that they'd like to throw at me.
Brent, there is one question in the Q&A there for you. It's from Brian Coffey there. He's seen your Rotary Pride flag there. Where did you get it from?
I got it made.
There you go, Brian.
I got it made myself, and then I got a slap on the wrist because it wasn't brand compliant. So I still use it at the Melbourne Pride March every year that happens in February. I don't bring it out to any official Rotary functions though, but the fellowship is planning on having some stuff like that on our website in the next little while. We just need to ask Rotary how to make it brand compliant. And I think I can do it with a bit of a white dot in the middle.
So Grant, I got, first of all, well done, really thought-provoking material, and well done. One of the things that sort of always resonates with me is we're talking about a giant shift and change. There's a sort of saying that I sort of live by, which is, for things to change, first I must change. I know when we're talking about diversity, there are a lot of online resources where people can delve into their own unconscious bias. I've done it myself. I'm wondering if there's an unconscious bias sort of survey that an individual can take that might give them some better insights into things other than just, say, gender, which are readily available, but that includes some of the other headings that you hold dear to your heart.
Yeah, I don't know of one single resource.
Yep.
I know of. I could probably go into my search history a bit and find lots of different ones, but
Yep.
I think that's step 2 after you've done that demographic search.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Look, it's a sort of building process. It's demographics.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it really is.
Yeah, but it's also about if we introduce things like that to a group of people who don't know about unconscious bias or even conscious bias, then we move nowhere. So I think we've got to tackle it on all of those separate platforms. But unless people understand what it is that's driving them and what's involved in their own individual makeup, and to understand and then sort of manage that, it's a hard one to conquer.
It is. And sometimes it's just about doing a bit of reading to understand what those different unconscious biases are.
Yeah.
But also just acknowledging that we all have, even me, unconscious bias, and that we all have our own layer of, and I use this word cautiously, privilege, is really important as well. Knowing that the people we are have formed our views of the world, and that somebody that looks a bit different to us probably doesn't have the same view.
I can see that Paul has got his hand up. He obviously has a question.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much, Linda. And thank you, Grant. Look, it's really great that we're having this conversation. We all have a role to play, and, there are fantastic opportunities for Rotary here. We've got a lot of work to do, and wouldn't it be great if we could get every Rotarian in our clubs, in our district, to listen to a presentation from Grant with regard to driving this forward and making a positive change, but at the same time, focusing on the opportunities that are available to us at clubs. So I didn't have a question, Grant. I just wanted to make that comment. Thank you very much for creating the conversation.
Thank you.
I've just noticed that we've actually got some people from outside our district tuned into our talk tonight. So welcome to those people who interloped on our little conversation, and we're very glad to have you involved. So are there any other questions? The presentation must have been excellent. So thank you. Oh, hey,
Tim Wills.
A question.
Actually, again, like Paul, it's not so much a question but a comment. Thank you to both presenters. Yes, Grant, there are a lot of ingrained attitudes of a whole variety of things. one of the things that I quite often encounter is a political assumption. Teachers are all Labor voters. And the fact that I finished being a teacher in 1988, I'm obviously still a red rag, a unionist and a Labor voter in the minds of many. So there's a lot of things, and awareness, the things that David was talking about in some simple self-assessments can certainly be very valuable, and any assistance grant that you can give in coming across those would be appreciated. In terms also of that, but also what David was saying, there's another demographic which we can identify and make use of, and that's the organisations that are in our communities. I think it was 3 years ago that Drouin had what we called What Drouin Has to Offer You Expo. And we approached all of the different clubs, so service clubs, church clubs, sports clubs, noting that the demographic was changing in our town, it was growing. And we got 25 organisations appear or got together in a school hall, and we promoted it widely so that people could just come along and see what Drouin has to offer you. Unfortunately, the clouds opened and it poured rain. But the 25 groups had a great time just learning about each other and committed to doing it again. Last Australia Day, Bob Vogt, who's on the screen here, was responsible for getting a number of those groups together in the party in the park that we were able to run. So that's a significant opportunity for recruitment across the board, and again to bring in groups such as organisations that would affiliate with things that Grant's been saying, but also other service clubs, church clubs and so on. And very easy to bring together with proper planning and venue where you can identify, and using what David was saying, make sure that you're getting the sorts of organisations that might attract new people. And it's a day well spent, just a suggestion. We'll do it again, I'm sure.
Yes, that sounds like an excellent idea, actually getting out and meeting with your community. And obviously, if you get the great weather, that an opportunity for people to come along and actually interact with the stalls, with the different organisations is a fabulous opportunity. So thanks for that suggestion, Tim. I think John's got his hand up there.
I have, Linda, thank you. I'd like to thank David and Grant for their presentations. Grant, I'd like to pick up on something that you spoke about, and I think it is the point you were making is a very good point, and that is the unfortunate situation when the Sergeant at Arms doesn't make a nice job of the fine session. The fine session within a club, and I feel quite strongly about this, can be absolutely fantastic, but you need to give that job to somebody who is dedicated to doing the thing properly. So to make a nice job of a fine session is certainly one of the first things you need to realise is if you have some female members in the club and you want to tell an absolute bloke joke, you really are embarrassing the ladies that are in the room. And there's nothing about being broad-minded or anything else to be considered. If you're going to embarrass somebody that's in the room, you're not making a very good job of it at all. And I just think in a lot of clubs, we seem to sometimes just let people, perhaps the tone of a joke that they put over doesn't suit everybody in the room. And I agree with Grant, somebody needs to take that person aside and say, now look, that isn't what we're looking for here. You know, I've seen blokes really do a joke that I found embarrassing as a bloke. It was that blue, and expect the ladies in the room not to be embarrassed, or other circumstances that it just doesn't suit all members. So thanks, Grant, for bringing it up. I think it's a real important thing about people enjoying Rotary, and after we've got them as a member, we've got to keep them. So we certainly got to need them to be comfortable.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll just say I'm personally not an advocate for getting rid of the fine session, because it's something really traditional and beautiful that Rotary does. It's beautiful when it's done right, though. That's the important bit. And I went shopping for clubs when I moved to Morwell, and there were one or two clubs in the area that did rub me the wrong way through a fine session, and I didn't join them because of that. So I think I'm not naming anyone. It's not a matter of that, but it was definitely a reason that I didn't join that club. So I think it's important, if you're bringing new people in, making them feel welcome like that is really important. And that's anyone can be that active bystander as well. There's some really great active bystander resources on the RI website that you can take a look at that are really good for stuff like that. So I'd encourage you to get on that rotary.org/membership page and have a look at what's there. And it got me thinking about another thing around equity that I forgot to mention while I was talking as well. And equity is around equal access to everyone based on their need. And I think a really good example of that sometimes is the awards programs that we run at clubs. And just having a male-female category in an award program that you run at a school isn't always overly equitable for a couple of reasons. One, because it doesn't address the needs of people that generally don't have access. So does the person that's at the bottom of the class or the middle of the class still have access to it? And I think that's a really good, more neutral way to put the example of equity that can help us understand, have we designed this thing in a way that means that somebody is never, ever going to have access to it because of the way that we've designed it? So those awards programs are a good example. The demographic data I was showing you before that doesn't count me is a good example. The male and female category, that means that someone that maybe identifies a little differently in between the two doesn't get counted. So that's what equity is about. And sorry, I forgot to mention that before.
Are there any more questions?
Linda, it's Bill Redfern, if I may ask two questions.
Yes, certainly.
Grant may have already indicated this. Is he willing to share that presentation, or is it going to be saved somewhere where we can access it? And
We're actually recording the session, but Grant will probably also make a slide deck available, I'd say, and the video. That was fabulous.
I can put that on there. I can put that on the Teams channel if people know how to access that.
Looks like you're having your arm twisted very quickly, Grant. Grant, my second question is to you. Would you be willing to do a speaking event at our Rotary Club?
Yeah, sure. Where are you?
Yes, presumably by Zoom, Grant.
Yeah, of course. Definitely.
Seeing as not only are we now used to it, I think even when we start doing face-to-face meetings, there will be members and guests who will still want to participate remotely. Yeah. Anyway, question is whether you'd be up for an invitation for a speaking event.
Anytime.
Thank you. Thanks, Linda.
Thank you, Bill. That's excellent. Well, it's probably timely that I actually thank Grant. He's certainly stimulated our imaginations, and hopefully that will take some of those valuable insights and really think about what he's presented tonight. And I'm sure, like I, and like we all have had thoughts and worries about doing or saying the wrong thing. And we certainly can learn so much from your examples. So thank you, Grant.
And Linda, if anybody ever has a question that they think that they can't ask someone, please ask me. I just want to say part of what I like to do is to help people with those questions that they think might be offensive to someone. So I've done a lot of DEI work in my workplace as well. So I've probably heard all of those questions that you think are rude and offensive and that you can't ask someone. So if you need someone, I'm that person.
Well, thank you. That's a fantastic offer. And I think people should absolutely take up that offer. When you're not sure, Grant's the person to ask. So thank you, Grant. And I would also like to remind clubs that we do have the club health check that you can access on the membership part of our district website. And we've also got the Reveal program, which was the program we started with Chris Williams over a year ago. And we actually did do that program with Traralgon Club. And that was actually identifying areas of the club that you can improve so that you're actually aware of your club and how it relates to people coming in to visit your club, you know, whether there's clicks, whether people are acknowledged at the door, or whether your sergeant sessions are inappropriate and probably should be examined. So there is that opportunity too for all clubs to get involved with that. It is a great program, and it was in the membership newsletter if you want to review that again and maybe look at something like that. So I guess the whole thing tonight is still, it's still about membership. It's still about making sure that we're getting opportunities for people to be exposed to Rotary and see the value of being in Rotary and making them feel engaged and welcome. So I thank you all for coming tonight, spending an hour with us on membership. One day we might get out and do it in person, which would be absolutely fabulous. But I think this is a great opportunity. People seem to be very comfortable tuning in for an hour and just having these opportunities to hear people and get new ideas, fresh ideas that you can try in your club. So thank you again. And please contact membership if you've got any questions. Contact Grant if there's those awkward questions that we're not sure if we're getting the right approach to people. And obviously David for his examples on using demographics, understanding your community, especially those new communities that are coming into your areas. We've got a gold mine because people are moving into Gippsland, they're escaping the city, and guess what? We've got our Rotary clubs all ready for them. So thank you again. We look forward to seeing you online again. So thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thanks, Linda.
Bye-bye. Thank you, Glenn.
Thanks.
Linda.
Thanks, Linda.
And to all our speakers, thank you.